Hello and welcome back to another episode of Vikings Happy Hour, sponsored by Lake Monster Brewing and That's Badass Wood Art. Remember to use promo code CTPocket for 20% off any one item at that'sbadasswoodart.com. Today, continuing the draft conversation, we're joined by Devin Jackson of the Philadelphia Inquirer, someone we all met down at the Senior Bowl. Devin, how are you?
Yeah, I'm doing great, guys. Thanks for having me on, and always excited to talk ball. A couple weeks here from the NFL draft, so
Yeah.
it's closing in quickly. Trying to get as many evaluations done as I can, but yeah, it's great to see you guys again. Like you said, we met down at the Senior Bowl, and lots of great conversation there. So excited to continue that and dive into this receiver and defensive line class.
Before we get to the wide receiver and defensive line class, I have to give the mic to Miles because he's got a good question. I think that's very applicable to the Vikings situation. So I'll let you take it there, Miles.
Yeah, Devin, how you doing, man? Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too, man.
So one thing that I was thinking about, and I think it came up in the draft on Twitter yesterday, was when the Eagles drafted Jalen Hurts. They obviously had Carson Wentz. I think they had literally just paid Carson Wentz or gave him a contract extension. Maybe it was that year or the year before. I can't quite remember, but they decided to draft Jalen Hurts in the second round that year. And I remember seeing mixed reviews across, whether it's Eagles fans or just like the draft community as a whole, of like thinking that they reached on Jalen Hurts and thinking that it was a bad decision, a waste of resources, yada yada. You think of all the shit people would say, right? And I was curious just a few things of like what your thoughts were on that scenario, as covering the Eagles, and also just from that, how you viewed Howie Roseman's decision to make that move, and how it's obviously been able to retain Jalen Hurts, move Carson Wentz, and rebuild that roster to be a Super Bowl contending roster.
Yeah, to me, I think obviously it paid off in the long run, but honestly, whenever you take a quarterback, there's always going to be pushback. Where even if you take him number one overall, you take one late in the seventh round, really just comes down to the confidence you have in the quarterback currently on your roster. And it was pretty obvious the injuries were a big issue with Carson Wentz and the reason why they even start shopping quarterback. But with Jalen Hurts, I think what also blew him away was his leadership ability, how he commands a room. So a lot of the things we don't get to see personally as like analysts, I think goes into that quarterback evaluation. And I really think it just comes down to situation and what exactly are you trying to build or do. And it was kind of a unique situation. Probably won't be replicated again, I would suppose. Paying over $100 million for a quarterback, then you end up drafting another quarterback. He actually ends up being your guy instead of the $100 million guy. That's certainly not something that you typically see. But I think it really came down to who Jalen Hurts is as a person, and the people in the building knew. And we've seen kind of the question marks around Carson Wentz leadership and just how people feel about him in the organization on his team. So I think that's kind of what went into it. And when you're taking a quarterback, especially in round 2 or 3, there's a possibility they could see the field at some point. And I think they saw that with Jalen Hurts. And obviously they probably didn't expect to move on from Wentz so quickly, but that's just kind of how things add up, in the NFL world. So I think for the Eagles, it certainly has paid off, and now they're about to sit on a contract extension potentially for Jalen Hurts. But they also made sure to tailor the offense around him and his skill set. So, I think that's also part of the buy-in is, one, is the play style you play with, is it sustainable? Is it going to make sure that you're healthy by the end of the season? And two, how do you take care of yourself and your body in the pocket, outside of the pocket? And I think those are two things that Carson Wentz didn't check the box for, and Jalen Hurts is able to do. Obviously, he got hurt with his shoulder injury, but they were planning on, he probably would have played through that injury if it were not for them already wrapping up the 1 seed. So I think that's kind of what it comes down to. It's a long-winded answer, but I think it really came down to some of the intangibles we don't see and we don't really know about, when deciding when to move on for a quarterback or going up and selecting one.
Well, so before Matt, real quick, before we jump in, my follow-up question on that, Devin, just keeping with the quarterback, the Vikings are kind of, I won't say they're in the same situation as the Eagles were with Carson Wentz and Kirk Cousins. But I will say it does feel like there's a little bit of an ending with Kirk Cousins in Minnesota sooner than later. I'm not saying that it felt like there's an ending with Carson Wentz, but kind of similarity in that, like, hey, maybe the Vikings could go draft a guy, but maybe not on day one. When you look at the draft, obviously the Eagles have always, even before the Jalen Hurts situation, they've always seemed to want to have an established backup quarterback, or invest in that position. Where do you think a team like the Vikings, obviously Marcus Mariota this year, where do you think the Vikings could go to look to make a similar move, whether it's day 2 in the draft, or even a free agency or trade for some of the younger guys that seem to be available across the league?
Yeah, this one, I think, I don't want to say it's pretty easy, but a lot of the points have been things have been pointing to Dorian Thompson-Robinson from UCLA. And look, I get it on both sides of the coin. Like, one side is like, yeah, you see the athleticism, you see what he's able to do out of structure as a runner, and just the natural arm talent he has. But on the other side, he's turnover prone. He makes a lot of questionable decisions when things are going well. So I can see kind of both sides of the coin. But for me, and a lot of people, even for their own teams, I've seen the Browns people want him as a potential down the line. Eagles want him as potential down the line as well. So to me, that's kind of the one that immediately sticks out to me in the draft wise. Now, if you're looking across the league, I don't know. There's a lot of options now that the situation in Green Bay looks like is starting to clear up with Jordan Love supposedly taking over. But maybe you go after a guy in San Francisco and Trey Lance, a Minnesota kid, kind of grew up in the area already. And obviously Minnesota passed over him. The University of Minnesota passed over him. He went to North Dakota State and did big things.
Thought he was a safety here. Crazy.
Yeah. But to me, he's probably the other option I see, just based on what it sounds like that they're going to roll with Brock Purdy whenever he comes back. And it just doesn't seem like Lance is going to win the job, and not really a popular thing. Maybe you take a late round flyer on Malik Willis, who seems like he's probably going to be QB3 in Tennessee, because they're going after a quarterback in this class. So those are two guys I would say, if you want to bet on them, I'd probably give a mid-round for Trey Lance, maybe a second or third or fourth, with Malik Willis probably a 7th. But I think those are two other guys you could possibly look at if you don't want to move on from Kirk Cousins this year or even the next year. If you're looking for just like maybe long-term down the line options, those are two other guys I will bring up as well.
And real quick, just like what you were talking about with the Eagles and what we're obviously potentially talking about with the Vikings, don't be content at quarterback until you found your guy. I mean, we've seen a lot of these examples. I mean, we talked about the Eagles. We've talked about the Chiefs, right? They had Alex Smith, who's running real well down there in Kansas City, and they went up and traded up to go get, Patrick Mahomes. Just because you have a good quarterback in hand right now doesn't mean that's the quarterback. Go find your guy and bet on him, even if you do have a heavy investment in at your current position. I mean, even this is a way different type of example, but the Cardinals did the same thing, right? They traded up for Josh Rosen, and then they went into Kyler Murray in the first, like the next year. So it's like, just don't be content with what you have. Go find the guy that you think will take you to the next level.
Yeah, I mean, to kind of add to that point, organizations know probably in a year or two if they have a guy or not. It's not really a 3-4 year thing. I mean, there are certain situations like a Daniel Jones who really took towards the end of his contract to see what he really was, but he also had a great mind in Brian Daboll come along and really develop him. So to me, you probably know within a couple years if the guy that you have is worth it or not. We saw the Vikings try to do that a couple years ago with Kellen Mond, and he's already off the roster. So, I would say organizations typically know way before fans if a guy is going to be the guy or not, or that has the potential to be. So I definitely agree with that point that you can't be, content with what you have. You should always be looking to upgrade, even if that's at the most premium position in football.
Let's shift it now to the people that they might be throwing to, because obviously the Vikings moved on from Adam Thielen this year, and there's kind of a void in our wide receiver room. We've talked wide receiver at length on this show, obviously, because we view it as a top priority. But some news, not necessarily news, but Jim Nagy, who kind of puts on the Senior Bowl, came out today and pretty much was like, NFL teams, they don't view these wide receivers except, Jackson Smith and Jigba as first round talent. What are your thoughts on the wide receiver room? Who do you think could be a good complement to Justin Jefferson? And we'll start there.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's always been Jackson Smith and Jigba at the top of the list for me. Just because of what he does as a route runner, his understanding of spacing, and what he was able to do in the Ohio State offense when he was healthy. So that makes a lot of sense to me. And in general, I think it makes sense because you look at the options at the top of the draft. Zay Flowers, he's a bit smaller on the smaller end. He has great tools, great speed. But what does he play at the next level? He played a lot of outside receiver at Boston College, and was able to create separation, especially on the vertical plane. But is he going to be big enough to last on the outside? I don't think so, at least at the NFL level. So to me, that makes sense why he's not getting first round buzz. Jordan Addison did most of his damage in his career from the slot. I know he played a lot of outside receiver at USC, and he's a route running technician. But in terms of physicality, he doesn't deal with it well on the outside. Go to Quentin Johnston, who a lot of people like, some don't like. Some label him as a typical big receiver coming out. I don't think it's on either side, people that extremely love him or don't love him. I do think there's probably split opinions because he's 6'3", 208, and sometimes he doesn't play like that and doesn't play with that size. So it makes a lot of sense. I think he has the receiving or rack ability after the catch. Has some really nice ability even before the catch. Obviously a vertical threat, but he doesn't always attack the ball as highest point. I thought his release packages could be a little bit diversified too at the line of scrimmage. And I just wanted to see him more of a presence, even on the field. And I know TCU with Max Duggan, a lot of the passes threw to him, some were overthrown, some underthrown. So you didn't have always an accurate quarterback. But I think with Johnston, I think he feels more like a early second round talent, just based on some of his deficiencies and not exactly being the most dominant guy that you expect from his size. So I mean, that's just four names right there that while you see the allure with them, you see some of their skill sets. They're not really dominant skill sets. Some of it translates more to the slot. With Johnson, he feels more like a early on deep threat. So to me, I think it's really depending on one, who do you value or what do you value in receivers? Do you want a guy that separates, but it's mostly from the slot? Do you want an outside player that's more of a vertical threat, but he's not going to give you all the underneath routes? So to me, I think it really depends on what you're looking for, and does a guy have that ability to play inside out? And I think that's going to be a big thing for pairing up someone with Justin Jefferson, because you want someone to, one, take away the attention from him, but two, if there's a lot of attention on him, can you command wide receiver 2 reps? Can you win consistently in man coverage? Because they're going to throw you on the island, at wide receiver 2 playing the Vikings, and they're going to make you beat them. And can you do that consistently? And I don't know, there's a lot of guys that are going to be able to answer that specifically from the outside. So I really think it depends on what do you value, and is size in that equation. And a lot of these guys are smaller slot guys that, probably are not going to be mostly an outside receiver at the next level.
Miles, being a wide receiver, former wide receiver yourself, what are you thinking there?
Yeah, I think the one thing with wide receiver evaluation, we've talked about this before, but I think for myself is I'm trying to adjust how I view players just because of how the NFL offenses are becoming, especially from the college level. College always seems to start the trend, and then NFL catches on later. But like the outside inside ability, and I think at the NFL level, you always have to have outside ability. Like it's just the way the NFL is and the way the athletes are. You can't just like only be a slot player. It's really hard to be those types of players. Like you see like a Cooper Kupp who, yes, he's a better slot receiver than he is an outside, but that guy can still win in a variety of ways, not just as a true slot. Amon-Ra St. Brown's a similar style too. Justin Jefferson, obviously, we know that he can win in all facets. I think the idea is with the way the NFL is going, though, is some of these guys that are quote unquote slot, not only, but slot specific, is there's a role for those guys in the NFL, and they don't have to be pigeonholed into one position. And just like cornerback in a way, guys can move around and they don't need to just be one spot only and go. So I try to keep an open mind with that. I agree with you that there isn't as many true like alpha, quote unquote alphas, guys that are really going to go out and win consistently, be an all pro level type receiver. I think Smith and Jigba is really the only guy that has maybe to me that ceiling. Doesn't mean other guys won't get it. That we always see outliers, guys. There's always that type of situation, but I think this draft alone really has guys that there's a lot of movement skills and a lot of like I don't like to use the word gadget as much, but like not gadget, but like guys that are really good with the ball in their hands. And so you want to get them manufactured touches, end arounds, screens, quick passes, those types of things. And so I like that for this season. If you're looking for those types of players, if you're looking for the big body type downfield receivers, there's not as much of that. But I think those are the type of guys you could spend a third round pick on instead of having to spend a first round pick on that. So I think it's all about like what your preference is. But when we talk Vikings, I think they don't need to go get like a big bodied X receiver to pair with JJ. They need to go get a guy that can complement JJ in a way that, especially if they're going to have more, two tight end personnel, two tight end sets, guys can move around. Like I always look at like the Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods. Neither of those guys are big. Neither of those guys are like truly like outside dominating receivers, but they both were able to mix and match within an offense that didn't force them to do things that they weren't like good at. And so I think you could go find a guy like that for the Vikings to pair with JJ. Zay Flowers is a great example of that. We've talked Josh Downs. I really like Jordan Addison personally. I just think he kind of has a little bit of that blend. Kind of Zay Flowers as well. I think those two guys really, to me, give me a really good blend of inside-out ability, downfield ability, and route running. And so you give that with a pair with a Justin Jefferson. That's what I'd be looking for. But when you look at day 2, day 3 picks, there's so much more variety there than there is. And I don't think there's many first-round prospects at wide receiver this year. So I think if you want to create a variety for yourself, you could go look at – I've talked about Michael Wilson from the Senior Bowl, but I know Jonathan Mingo's become a really popular name. He's that one true big body X receiver, but he's good with the ball in his hands. He's explosive. I've recently watched Jared Wayne from Pitt, who played with Jordan Addison. He's not as explosive, but there's twitch and there's some short area ability for a bigger guy that could be a possession receiver, but he also wins with some decent route running. I don't think he's an early round pick by any means, but he's a guy that if you're looking for a bigger body guy late, he could be a guy to take a chance on.
Devin, are there guys in the later rounds that you are looking at as potential high upside players?
Yeah, one player that really comes to mind that I've really liked, over the last year and a half is Jalen Cropper from Fresno State.
Okay.
And I think he's the blend of a guy that can play outside and from the slot, just with kind of his route running acumen, the ability to run tempo, and kind of keep defenses off balance. And all of his best games have come against top tier competition. You look at UCLA game from 2021. He had a fantastic game against them. Had a really nice game against Oregon State this year. Had a decent showing against USC before Jake Haener got hurt. And for me, I think he's a guy that can be kind of that blend of an inside and out type of player. He played a lot of slot because they wanted to get him the ball quickly. And obviously Jake Haener doesn't have the biggest arm, so he's not going to be able to stretch the field like some NFL quarterbacks might be able to. But I think they use him all over the place. So they threw jet sweep motions to him, kind of manufactured touches. But then he has the ability to get open, find the soft spots and zones, and really be dynamic after the catch too. 2021 in particular was probably his best season at Fresno State. Just his ability to get open, make catches in kind of a crowded area. He's fearless over the middle of the field. So he's a guy to me that probably carves out a little bit better career than where he'll get drafted. I think he'll probably get drafted in the 4th or 5th round. But if that's a guy that, you know, you could see becoming, you know, a really high level wide receiver 2 or 3, I would bet on him as a guy. And then Jaden Reed from Michigan State has also gotten a lot of buzz on social media.
There he is.
And
that's my guy.
Yeah, he has a really nice speed. Obviously, ran a really fast 40, but I think he does a really nice job of understanding how to create space down the field. He's not the biggest guy. I think he was 5'9" or 5'10", so he's not going to be a guy that you put in a lot of contested catch situations. But his ability to threaten vertically, I think, allows him to run those you know, dig routes, allows him to run those comebacks. Because people were worried about his speed and what he does, and he was able to stick on the outside, you know, as a guy that, you know, was small in stature. But I was watching a Wisconsin game last week, and he caught the game-winning touchdown on a fade route, and he was able to use his small frame and still make a contested catch in the corner of the end zone. So those are two guys that, to me, were probably borderline. Maybe you could take them late round 3, early round 4, and I will be just fine with. But a guy to me that I really think is a bit underrated in this class. He didn't get the test, and you know, he's also a smaller slot receiver, quote unquote, but plays much bigger. Is Parker Washington from Penn State. He's another player for me that just the offense he played in just did him no favors. A lot of the times he's having to make contested catches. He has, I mean, if you look at his highlight reel, he has one-handed catches, one against Michigan State, one against Arkansas, had a career game against Ohio State this past year, missed the last couple games with an ankle injury and hasn't really tested. And I don't think he's going to be a blazer, but he understands, one, how to use his body and use route tempo to keep players off balance. And 2, he runs like a running back with the ball in his hands. He bounces off of tacklers. They got him the ball a lot in that jet sweep action, dumped it off. And he's always finding space, always find the littlest spaces to, you know, exploit zone coverages. So those are 3 guys for me. If you're looking for late round receivers that, you know, may not at the surface fulfill the requirements in terms of height, size, but have tremendous ball skills and have maybe 1 or 2 traits that you really, really appreciate. I think those guys can turn out to be some really nice either wide receiver 2 or 3s. I think they have the skill set to do so.
Yeah, Jaden Reed for me was – sorry, Ryan, real quick. Jaden Reed for me was like a mid-round Zay Flowers. So, like, if you can't get Zay Flowers early, go get Jaden Reed in the middle rounds because they're similar. Jaden Reed's a little bit bigger. He's like 5'11", 190. So not like super small, but like I think there's still some of that style play, inside-out ability too. So, but Ryan, go ahead.
No, that's all good. So, you know, we talked about receivers potentially, you know, maybe not going to be our round 1 target because grades are pushing some of those other guys to day 2. The other group that we wanted to talk to you about today was the defensive line, and where we need help. Obviously, we are uncertain of the futures of Danielle Hunter and of Zadarius Smith. We just signed Davenport to a 1-year deal. So outside linebacker, edge, whatever you want to say, shaky for the future for us. Interior defensive line, we have Harrison Phillips, and that's about it. And we signed Dean Lowry. We have Kyrus Tonga, a couple of names, but, you know, no one special. So is there some good defensive linemen, both from the edge and the interior, that maybe we would want to target on day 1? Or if you want to maybe talk to as well about some of those day 2 guys that if we decide to trade back, that really intrigue you.
Yeah, edge rusher this is a great class to get an edge rusher. You can find a lot of guys that are going to go in rounds 2 through probably 4 or 5 that could probably find a role within a year 1 or year 2. So kind of racking my brain at some potential options. For me, I'll work my way from day 3 and then go back to day 2. But for edge specifically, a guy I think that's not getting a lot of buzz and didn't really have the greatest Senior Bowl, but I still really like his film, is Isaiah McGuire from Missouri. He has a really strong hands at the point of the attack. Has the ability to extend and kind of control opposing offensive tackles. And he has some decent bend around the edge. He's not going to be one of those flexible edge rushers like a BJ Ojolari or a Nolan Smith, but he's really strong at the point of attack, and he's a really good run defender. He's able to kind of maintain his gap, lock out, peak, and make the tackle. And he's a guy to me that has a really high motor, has really nice intangibles and size. And he won't blow you away like athletically wise or testing wise, but if you're looking for more depth, a guy that can play a 5 tech, maybe he can be a stand up outside linebacker. I think he has some tools and ability to do that. So he's a guy to me that I think that could be a potential target. You look at the day two class is really robust, and it really depends on the type of guy you're going for. If you want more of a exciting, kind of do it all edge rusher, I would like a BJ Ojolari on day two. His testing wasn't the greatest. He was dealing with a hamstring injury, but in a guy that can come off the edge, be really bendy and athletic, and threaten tackles and force them to overset and win back inside. And has some decent ability as a run defender, but certainly not perfect. I think Ojolari would be a nice fit for sure. And then kind of a later day three guy to me, Rice Edge, Ikena, and see, in Chiwuko. I think that's how you pronounce his name. But he's another guy that popped on my radar earlier in the season and went back and took a deeper look at him. I think he's another guy that has some like inside out versatility. Maybe you play him at 3 tech, maybe you play him at 5 tech, and kind of move him around a little bit on the interior. But he's a really disruptive and powerful, especially against USC earlier in the season. So those are a couple names from the edge class in particular that kind of stand out to me in terms of, hey, this could be, a guy that to select later in the draft, and maybe he can turn out to be, down a year or two away from being a heavy contributor. But if you're looking more so like immediate, guys that'll help you on the edge, certainly Ojolari, and then Auburn edge, Derek Hall as well. If you're looking for more of a power rusher that can threaten, high side winning rush on the outside, I think Hall kind of fits that bill. Really strong in the run game as well, and just has powerful hands and can really maintain and hold blocks well at the point of attack. So those are a couple names to me that stick out. There's so many more names as well. You think about Will McDonald, who we saw down at the Senior Bowl, and he's obviously checks all the boxes in terms of flexibility, ability to win inside and out. He's playing
likes anime.
Yeah, he does it all. But the edge class to me, man, you can find really starter level guys from rounds 2 to 4, and then 5 through 7. There's guys with traits that maybe takes a couple more years to develop, but certainly has the skill set to be contributors at the next level.
So as far as then like interior defensive linemen, I know we've had conversations. Miles and Ryan will roll their eyes when I mention his name again, but Keanu Benton, you actually just wrote a really great article on him just the other week. But who are some other guys for interior defensive linemen that the Vikings could target?
Yeah, to me, I think it really depends on how early you want to go with defensive tackle. I don't think the depth of this class is as robust as some of the other positions. I think you're pretty much going, if you want to get a defensive tackle, it's probably going to be in the first 2 or 3 rounds. At least a defensive tackle that can be, starter level immediately. Benson is certainly at the top of the list for sure. Big fan of his and what he does in the interior. Obviously, Jalen Carter will be out of reach. He should be gone by 10 at the latest. But you look at guys like Brian Brisset and some of those names. Obviously, Kalijah Cansey. Those guys are more so. You're not going to get a quote unquote like one or zero tech. Really probably in the first 2-3 rounds. I know Siaki Ika is a guy that probably is a one tech or zero tech at the next level, but you're going to get a lot of like three techs, and a lot of guys that can move around. Maybe they can go bump out to five tech. But guys like Brisset and Cansey are probably guys that played three tech. A guy like that maybe goes late day 2 or early day 3. Kobe Wooden from Auburn, he probably plays three tech, but started his career as a five tech, and has some ability to split, guards and tackles. Has some interesting speed at the point of attack, agility. Can really use his swim move to his advantage, and really has a nice motor too. So Kobe One is a guy that I would target if you're looking more so of a versatile guy in the interior, but doesn't necessarily play 0-1 tech. Carl Brooks from Bowling Green is another player that I will be interested in. I'm very interested to see where exactly he goes, because some people think he may go in the mid round. Some think he's probably a later day 3 option. But went to the Senior Bowl, had a really nice week, didn't get invited to the combine, which was a little bit surprising. But you turn on this film, and he's a 300-pound defensive lineman, rushing from the edge, and coming off the edge to really be a menace in the MAC. He doesn't just do it against MAC opponents. He did against UCLA and Mississippi State too, which I kind of want to highlight, because a lot of people, when you talk about him, they say he was beating up on lower competition, but he also made an impact against UCLA and Mississippi State. So those kind of the names I'm just kind of throwing out there as potential options. But a Gervon Dexter is another guy that probably plays three tech at the next level, although he did play some 0-1 tech at Florida. I just don't think his his handwork is up there to be in that and dealing with double teams. He doesn't do it as consistently.
He needs a motor.
Yeah,
that's what he needs. Yeah.
Yeah, and he needs to get off the ball quicker as well. But Gervon Dexter is someone else that comes to mind. Maybe he's better suited as a three tech. So to me, I think there's a lot of, game-wrecking three tech ability in this defensive tackle class. You're not going to get a lot of guys that can really do it from 0-1 tech. Jalen Carr really is the only, obviously a top one. Keanu Benton is the next one. Then probably Siaki Ika are probably the three guys that you want playing right over the center and being disruptive.
Could Maisie Smith be doing this?
I think he's more of a three tech too, to be honest. And I think he can play one tech and he can be disruptive if you're asking him to not constantly face double teams and just be a space eater. But if you're asking him to be a space eater, I just don't think that's an effective use of his skill set.
Especially in a 3-4, that's you can't really hide those nose tackles too. That's the hard part.
Yeah. So to me, I think with Mozzie is I see him as a potential high level three tech. And I think he can be an above average one tech or zero tech, but I just don't think if you're trying to maximize his skill set, I don't think putting him at just as one shade or right over the center does him justice. And you can see a little bit of that on the Michigan film. He just isn't as comfortable dealing with that play after play, which makes a guy like Keanu Benton, in my opinion, so valuable, because he's really, outside Jalen Carr, he's really the next guy that can do that consistently. And if a team needs him to do that, he'll do it. But certainly Benton would be probably a dominant three tech with his skill set and ability to disrupt. So that's kind of where I'm at with the defensive tackle class. I think there's a lot of really good potential three tech type players where if you need them to do that, they certainly can. But I just don't think there's a lot of guys that you throw over the center and they're not going to be as effective.
Well, that's certainly a lot of names to sit here and ponder over the next few weeks. I know anything can change for the Vikings. I really don't know what they're going to do except for maybe trade back. But now we're getting rumors this morning that they could be a dark horse candidate for pick 3. So who knows anymore? But I appreciate you, Devin, hopping on and talking about the wide receiver class, the defensive line class a little bit. Before we let you go, can you let people know where they can find you and anything that you're working on here in the coming weeks?
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter at @RealD_Jackson. You can find most of my Eagles draft material on the Inquirer or just Inquirer.com for the Philadelphia Inquirer. Working on some positional previews for the tight end class that will be up by Wednesday, and then probably on Friday as well have a look at the linebacker class as well, and take a deeper dive on both those groups. Excited to get through a tight end class. I have 3 more guys to watch before I wrap that up, and really excited with what this class could do. I think every team should be in the market for a tight end in this particular draft, just because I don't think we're going to get as deep of a group probably for the next couple years. So I would suggest to teams, if they're not already planning on doing so, definitely looking at the tight end class. Linebacker class, I think, is probably in the same area as the defensive line class. They have a couple guys up top, but a lot of those day 2 and day 3 guys are going to be more specific scheme fits. So I'm really excited to dive into both and release that work. But yeah, that's what I'm working on right now.
Perfect. I look forward to reading it. Your writing is exceptional, and yeah, I just want to thank you for hopping on here today. For everybody watching this, make sure you like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. We have a giveaway at 3,000 subscribers, as well as a ton of more Vikings coverage coming up until the NFL draft. And if you're in town this Wednesday, April 12th at 7:30, Ryan, Miles, myself will be at Lake Monster in St. Paul for our monthly Vikings hangout. Come have some beers with us, chat football. It's supposed to be a beautiful spring day in Minnesota. I think it's supposed to hit like 78 or something like that. So we look forward to seeing you guys out there. And until next time, Skol Vikings.